Arcanine is probably the most dog-like of all of the dog-like animals in the Pokemon world. It has a real Generation 1 philosophy to its design. It doesn't give away many specifics, but it clearly shows what type of animal it's meant to be. It's fluffy, it has a long snout, and it's a good boy. It's probably also the most wolf-like of the dogs in Pokemon. And it's because of this that I think it's probably the ancestor to all the other dogs. Pokemon species names aren't always the best. Slowbro, for example, is the hermit crab. It's definitely not a crab, but the hermit part is kinda right, so Arcanine's species name is the legendary Pokemon, which to me makes it feel as though this had a lot of interaction with early humans. It's a bit of a long shot here, but maybe that's because it was domesticated. The first of the carnivora to be domesticated, similar to like how the wolf was domesticated into the dog in our world. It also shows that the humans in the Pokemon world clearly value this Pokemon a lot and have a special relationship with it. And by that, I don't mean like your special relationship with Gardevoir. I more mean that it was clearly important and valued to these humans. Perhaps even it was their best friend. This video here is going to talk about all of the dogs in the Pokemon world and how they fit in with each other. It's a bit of an unusual one, this, because dogs are actually one singular species. Unlike Pokemon's previously mentioned rather unhelpful names, in the real world we use scientific names. Take Homo sapien for example. Homo, stop laughing, indicates that the animal is in the genus of Homo, whereas sapien indicates the species. The study of naming and classifying groups is what we call taxonomy, and this specific naming convention is known as the Linnaeus system. There are a lot more layers further up to this, but for now we'll just go on genus and species. All dogs have the scientific name Canis familiaris. Canis is also the genus that includes wolves, obviously the closest ancestors to the dogs. Familiaris is just used to show that this is the domestic dog. Following on from Arcanine, I want to include Okidogi. The similarities between Arcanine and Okidogi are pretty apparent. They've got similar facial structures, and before we had Okidogi, we were using Arcanine as our Pokemon Doge representative. The reason why Okidogi is so closely related to Arcanine is because it's a Shiba Inu, which is one of the oldest dog breeds in the world. They're a type of Japanese hunting dog that is at least over 500 years old. Most other dog breeds originated around the Victorian era, where people began to experiment more with dogs. When I say experiment more, I kinda do mean what you're thinking. Because dogs are all one species, they can interbreed with each other. However, small changes known as variation, essentially randomness during genetics, mean that different traits emerge. If you selectively breed these traits together, you get specific type of dogs that are hyper-specialized. This is essentially how a dog breed forms. You take one trait and take it to the extreme. Unfortunately, this means that you have a lot of interbreeding with dogs, which can lead to health issues down the line. This is something that can be seen with Slurpuff. Slurpuff's a pretty questionable dog, because it's a marshmallow, but it has a kind of dog vibe that just can't be explained. To me, it's most similar to a pug, a type of dog that has had massive amounts of health problems. This is because pugs are at a Habsburg level of interbreeding. Long pointed snouts are one of the key traits of all caniforms, the larger group that includes bears and seals and weasels. But pugs have been specifically bred to not have this, to have flat, stubby noses. They often really struggle to breathe and have lots of other health problems. To me, Slurpuff has this feel to it, an ultimately energetic Pokemon that can't really keep up. It's interesting that Pokemon chose sweets or candy for their most pug-like Pokemon. These are often foods that we consider to be very modified or not natural, similar to how a pug isn't really meant to exist in the natural order of things. Like most dog breeds, it's an entirely man-made creation. The next dog Pokemon that we see is Smeargle, which shows to us that even by Generation 2, there'd been a massive change in Pokemon design philosophies. Rather than the generic Arcanine, we get a specific type of dog, a Beagle. Smeagol is based off the modern Beagle, but for most of history, Beagle was simply the term that we used to describe small hunting dogs, which is essentially what a modern Beagle is. Beagles are a type of hound, which essentially is a dog bred for hunting purposes. This is actually surprisingly similar to the Dachshund, which literally means badger dog in German. Dachshunds were originally bred for hunting out badgers. The more modern dogs obviously aren't used for this. Some of these traits can still be seen in the modern dog. They're one of the most aggressive dog breeds in the world. Generation 9 in the Paldean region actually introduced a lot of dogs, and this includes the Dachshund representative, Dachshund. In this Pokemon, we can probably say it's much less specialized than the modern Dachshund that we see, as it has a relatively normal length body compared to the sausage dogs that we know them now as. Furfrou is pretty obviously a poodle, even though it does draw some looks from an Afghan hound, which is one of the earliest known dog breeds. Something that happens a lot in dogs is that they change over time. So for example, the poodle was originally developed as a water dog, designed to hunt things like ducks. However, in the modern world, it's much more known as a show dog. Furfrou clearly represents this with how you can customize it, taking much more inspiration from its modern uses rather than its working origins. Most of the modern developments in dog breeding occurred in Germany, something which we can see in the last few dogs that we've covered. The Dachshund and Poodle are both German dogs, and so is the Doberman that Houndoom is based off. Houndoom obviously draws inspiration from stuff like Devils and Hellhounds, but its real-world counterpart is definitely the Doberman. Dobermans are guard dogs, something that works perfectly with Houndoom's Cerberus-like origins. One thing that might mean that Houndoom isn't a dog is the fact that it has horns. Horns are pretty much reserved for ungulates, but I definitely don't think that you could say that Houndoom isn't a type of dog. This video is getting pretty long now, judging by how much more I have left to edit, so I'm going to split it into two halves. If you like this format where I'm trying to go a bit more analytical and into more depth with every single Pokemon, please leave a like and subscribe. I hope I've earned it. Thank you.